Some say money can buy happiness, but in the case of the Rockefeller mansions, it bought secrets. Dark secrets, hidden behind walls of gold and marble. We'll explain everything in this video, step by step. Don't skip it. John D. Rockefeller, the name synonymous with wealth, with power, with a kind of quiet inevitability that seemed to bend the world to his will. An oil magnate, yes, but also a philanthropist whose name graced schools, universities, and hospitals, leaving a legacy that gleamed in polished marble and bronze plaques. Yet behind the public image, behind the speeches and donations, there existed another obsession, one less spoken of, whispered only in the quiet corners of servant halls and estate offices, where the echo of polished footsteps could not hide the truth. Mansions, palaces, not merely large, but vast beyond comprehension, sprawling across landscapes that would rival entire villages, each acre manicured, controlled, and imbued with a precision that was almost unnatural. Every stone laid, every gilded corner, every arching staircase was a statement, a declaration of dominance, a monument not only to money, but to an idea, that the world could be ordered, tamed, and displayed according to the vision of one man. Walk through one of these estates, and the grandeur overwhelms. Marble that gleams even in shadow, imported from distant lands. Oak staircases polished until the wood reflects like glass. Ceilings that soar, adorned with paintings of gods and allegories of virtue, designed to impress the visitor into silence. Gardens that stretch as far as the eye can see, fountains whispering in the wind, hedges sculpted into geometries that seem almost unnatural, deliberate in their perfection. And yet, for all the brilliance, for all the elegance, there is a tension in the air, almost imperceptible, like a note sustained just beyond hearing. The labor, the toil, the quiet sacrifices of those who built and maintained these realms, servants, artisans, craftsmen, are hidden behind every polished surface. Their lives, compressed into long hours and hidden wings, are etched into the very bones of the houses, a human cost that no ledger could ever capture. But few realized the mansion held a darker secret, one that would haunt generations. For in the corners of these estates, beyond the sweeping ballrooms and sunlit galleries, shadows lingered. Rooms existed that no guidebook mentioned. Corridors where whispers traveled faster than footsteps, where disputes and betrayals were recorded not in newspapers, but in the memory of walls that had seen too much. Families, though surrounded by wealth and beauty, could not escape the quiet suffocation of isolation. Children grew up in palaces yet longed for freedom. Servants labored under the weight of expectation, their humanity obscured by the glittering veneer of privilege. The grandeur, while intoxicating, was also a cage. And the obsession did not end with construction. Each mansion was a stage, a canvas on which Rockefeller painted his authority. Yet the paint, the gold leaf, the imported stone, could not hide the fractures. Marriages strained under scrutiny. Alliances shifted like shadows across the marble floors. Whispers of scandal and quiet tragedy were never meant to escape, but somehow they seeped through the edges. A child lost, a betrayal unnoticed by the world, a servant's life ended quietly in a corridor no visitor would ever tread. Every mansion was both a triumph and a tomb, celebrating ambition while quietly mourning the weight it demanded. And those who entered these halls, even for the briefest moment, felt it, a chill beneath the warmth, a tension beneath the opulence, a question that remained unanswered. How much beauty can the human heart endure before it fractures? Marble from Italy, quarried from cliffs that had felt the wind for centuries before being cut into slabs heavy enough to crush a man, transported across oceans with painstaking care. Oak from forests that no longer exist, felled by axes and saws, each ring of the tree a story of time and endurance now sacrificed for a staircase or paneling that gleamed beneath candlelight. Ceilings that kissed the sky, adorned with frescoes and gilded moldings, designed to awe the visitor, to make them small in the presence of power. Architects called it perfection, a triumph of human vision and skill. Yet perfection came at a price. Laborers toiled for endless hours, their hands raw and calloused, chisel and hammer striking stone and wood in rhythm with an ambition that was not their own. In the silence of the workrooms, sweat mingled with dust, exhaustion with pride, and the whisper of dreams not their own pressed heavy on their shoulders. Every carved balustrade, every polished surface, every shimmering chandelier was a statement of control. It was art, yes, but also an assertion. Here is a world ordered by wealth, by taste, by the will of one man. But few realized the mansion held a darker secret, one that would haunt generations. Beneath the grandeur, the glitter, the sweeping halls, there were corridors the public would never see, rooms built to conceal as much as to impress. Hidden staircases, servants' passages, storage chambers deep in the bowels of the estate where the lives of those who maintained the mansion intersected quietly, invisibly, with the lives of its masters. In these spaces, fatigue became despair, obedience became silent rebellion, and the beauty above was almost unbearable in its contrast. For every chandelier that sparkled in the ballroom, a worker had bent over stone floors until their back ached, until hands blistered, until fingers bled. For every gilded cornice that glimmered in candlelight, a craftsman had known hunger, cold, and the relentless pressure of deadlines dictated by the ambitions of men whose wealth dwarfed imagination itself. The mansion was more than a house, it was a stage. Yet the performances it demanded were invisible, and the audience was indifferent. Children of laborers grew up hearing only the echo of footsteps in marble halls. Families of the elite moved through the rooms with smiles, with laughter, with the casual assumption that the world was theirs by right, never seeing the quiet exhaustion etched into every wall. And sometimes, if one listened closely, the walls seemed to sigh, absorbing sorrow and fatigue like a sponge, carrying it forward into the decades to come. Artisans who had poured years into crafting perfection often vanished from history, their names forgotten, their contributions immortalized only in the cold stone that bore no witness to suffering. Even as sunlight streamed through towering windows, it could not illuminate the tension that lingered. The mansion's beauty was seductive, intoxicating, almost holy, and yet, in that very perfection, there was a kind of violence. Ambition imposed itself in silence, reshaping lives quietly, invisibly, until the human cost became part of the structure itself. Every hall, every chamber, every polished surface whispered of devotion, yes, but also of sacrifice. The line between awe and oppression was thin, almost imperceptible, and those who entered could feel it in the air, in the hush that fell over the gardens, in the weight of history pressing down like a stone ceiling on the hearts of the living. Servants lived in shadowed wings, corridors that seemed endless, lit only by slivers of morning light or the occasional flicker of a lantern. They moved quietly, invisible to the families whose wealth defined the very walls around them, their footsteps muffled against carpets that gleamed like rivers of gold. Meals were prepared in kitchens far removed from the dining halls, laundry folded in rooms that never saw the sun, beds made with precision yet slept in exhaustion. Families rarely crossed paths with those who maintained their world, yet the lives of the elite and the lives of those who served were entwined in ways almost imperceptible. Every polished doorknob, every perfectly laid tablecloth, every glimmering chandelier depended on labor performed in silence, on devotion masked as duty. And behind closed doors, beyond the public face of opulence and perfection, tragedies unfolded quietly, unseen. Births arrived uncelebrated, children nurtured in hidden chambers. Deaths passed with barely a whisper, the mourners unseen, unheard. Scandals flickered in corners, dissipating into silence before anyone could tell the world. What happened behind these walls shocked everyone who glimpsed the estate's private history, and some secrets were never meant to leave. The corridors, though luxurious, were haunted by whispers of despair and desire. Families whose names carried influence and admiration were not immune to loneliness, jealousy, or heartbreak. Children, surrounded by beauty yet isolated, often wandered the halls in search of attention that never came, while their parents' ambitions eclipsed warmth and tenderness. In the servants' quarters, young men and women struggled to reconcile the pride of serving the grandest house in the country with the weight of constant surveillance, endless expectation, and a hierarchy that measured human worth in silence and efficiency. Even the laughter that occasionally echoed in the ballrooms felt rehearsed, hollow, as if the very architecture demanded obedience and suppressed the human heart. Yet few realized the mansion held a darker secret, one that would haunt generations. For beneath the formal gardens and the crystal chandeliers, beneath the sunlit galleries where art hung in perfect order, there existed a network of rooms and corridors untouched by family eyes, spaces where ambition and obsession had left their mark. Old letters, hidden diaries, and private journals hinted at long-buried disputes, clandestine relationships, and unspoken grief that no visitor could witness. The walls themselves seemed to absorb memory, carrying with them decades of whispered arguments, clandestine meetings, and quiet despair. Even the very furniture, polished to gleam, seemed to exhale a weight of stories too fragile for public knowledge, histories of service, sacrifice, and sorrow that could not be celebrated, only endured. In those shadowed wings, time moved differently. Hours stretched, days blurred, and the line between duty and survival became almost imperceptible. Every gesture, every step, every silence was charged with meaning. A servant's glance might carry hope or warning. A family member's smile could conceal fear or ambition, and yet the world outside saw only the perfection of the estate, the elegance of its gatherings, the smoothness of its reputation. The mansion demanded its human tribute quietly, inexorably, shaping lives as much as it displayed wealth. Children grew up observing power, learning the unspoken codes of grandeur and submission. Adults measured their worth not in words but in obedience, in the ability to vanish behind the beauty that had been created at such cost. The mansion, magnificent and terrifying, became a mirror of desire and fragility, reflecting both the brilliance of human aspiration and the shadow of human vulnerability. Kaikwit, the crown jewel. Built in the 20th century, it sprawled across more than 200 acres of meticulously sculpted landscape, where every tree seemed planted with intention, every flower bed aligned to an unseen symmetry. The gardens seemed endless, a world of clipped hedges and winding paths that led visitors on a silent journey through beauty and order. Fountains whispered in the wind, their waters catching sunlight like scattered diamonds, while statues of myth and memory stood sentinel along shaded walkways. Visitors often paused, mesmerized by the art, the tapestries, the golden chandeliers that reflected a world of wealth so complete it bordered on the surreal. It was perfection engineered to impress, to dominate the senses, to convey power in the language of elegance. And yet, for all its grandeur, Kaikwit was not merely a showcase of taste or status. Beneath the gardens, beneath the perfectly raked gravel paths and manicured lawns, there lay a hidden network of tunnels and rooms, unseen by the casual visitor, almost forgotten by the guides, spaces where the mansion's secrets accumulated like dust. Few realized the mansion held a darker secret, one that would haunt generations. The tunnels, dark and narrow, seemed almost alive, carrying whispers and echoes of lives intertwined with ambition and control. Workers had carved these passages in silence, hours blending into nights as they built a world that would never be seen, yet shaped every aspect of life above. These hidden corridors connected servant quarters, storage rooms, and private chambers, and in their shadows, the ordinary routines of life collided with the extraordinary pressures of wealth. Lives were spent in service to beauty and order, their rhythms dictated by chandeliers that sparkled above and unseen doors that dictated when work began and when it ended. The mansion's brilliance, while dazzling to the eye, exacted a quiet toll, an emotional tribute to the illusion of perfection. And yet, the human stories hidden within Kaikwit were far more complex than the marble and gold suggested. Families moved through grand halls with careful ceremony, yet their private worlds were filled with tension, jealousy, and longing. Children walked corridors lined with masterpieces, yet felt a profound isolation, a distance between their desires and the expectations imposed upon them by wealth that seemed limitless. Servants navigated the same spaces with acute awareness, sensing the invisible boundaries, anticipating the moods and demands of those they served, their labor a constant, silent negotiation between obedience and survival. Even the most opulent rooms carried traces of these pressures, the polished floors absorbing hurried footsteps, the painted ceilings listening to hushed conversations that would never reach daylight. Over time, the mansion became more than architecture. It became a mirror of human aspiration and human fragility. Each gallery, each wing, each shadowed stairwell reflected not only beauty but tension, not only wealth but cost. Guests marveled at tapestries and chandeliers, unaware of the careful choreography behind every gesture, every meal, every event that allowed perfection to exist above. And in the tunnels below, the mansion's true stories persisted, whispered griefs, concealed affairs, ambitions that could not be named aloud, all of it absorbed into the very bones of the estate. The weight of these secrets, the interplay of awe and anxiety, desire and obedience, created a rhythm that pulsed quietly beneath the splendor. The grandeur was undeniable, but beneath the surface, Kaikwit was alive with the human tension that beauty alone could never mask, a legacy as haunting as it was magnificent. Rumors of forbidden affairs lingered in the air long before the ink dried on formal announcements, whispered in the quiet corridors of estates where chandeliers glimmered like distant stars. Business betrayals left invisible scars, their consequences unfolding behind closed doors, while the public witnessed only success and dominance. Even whispers of family feuds threatened to unravel the very fabric of an empire built on ambition and control, conflicts so potent they could have toppled reputations, fortunes, and lives. Yet the world, dazzled by wealth and power, by the gleam of marble and gold, saw only prestige. Few saw the human cost hidden behind the carefully curated appearances, the quiet sacrifices, the unspoken tension that threaded through generations like a shadow neither welcomed nor dismissed. Some stories were buried so deep, locked within personal diaries, hidden letters, and rooms rarely entered, that their existence seemed almost imaginary, phantom echoes trapped in the architecture itself. One room, one letter would later reveal a truth that changed everything. Yet for decades it remained silent, waiting. The letter, yellowed and fragile, contained names and dates, confessions and grievances, details that could unravel the polished narrative of propriety maintained above. The room that held it was unremarkable at first glance, a simple study with bookshelves and a desk carved from rare wood, lined with volumes of law, philosophy, and art. Yet its walls absorbed the tension of conversations never repeated, the weight of decisions made under duress, and the quiet despair of those who lived in service to the empire's facade. Every object within seemed to hum with the presence of past occupants, the unseen threads of ambition and fear interwoven with luxury. Light fell through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like ghosts, and even the faintest sound, a creak of a hinge, the rustle of paper, felt magnified, charged with anticipation, as if the room itself had been holding its breath for decades. The human cost was not measured in money or property, but in lives quietly reshaped by loyalty, guilt, and obligation. Marriages endured in silence, while hearts longed for freedom. Children grew up understanding privilege as both gift and cage, learning that obedience was currency, that discretion was survival. Servants navigated the same spaces with a vigilance born of necessity, aware that a misstep could ripple across the household, leaving lasting consequences invisible to outsiders. Even the grandest balls, the most lavish dinners, carried a tension beneath the surface, a choreography of appearance and restraint, a delicate negotiation between desire and decorum. Behind the smiles and laughter was an undercurrent of pressure, subtle yet relentless, shaping the rhythms of daily life. The smallest gestures weighted with significance, and in that room the letter waited, a silent testament to the empire's hidden truths. Its contents threatened to expose betrayal that had been concealed, love that had been denied, and decisions that had carved lives as surely as chisels carved marble. The revelation would ripple outward, touching not only those present, but echoing across the generations, reshaping understanding of the mansion, the family, and the fragile balance between power and humanity. The walls seemed to lean closer, listening, as if they had borne witness to too much and now demanded recognition. Every creaking floorboard, every shadow in the corner, carried memory. Every chandelier above reflected not only light, but the unspoken cost of ambition, the emotional toll of secrecy, the quiet despair of a world that prized appearance over truth, and yet was built, irrevocably, upon both. Time eroded even the grandest walls, as if decades were tides slowly wearing away not only stone and mortar, but the illusions built within. The once pristine facades, gleaming with the pride of craftsmanship and the audacity of wealth, began to soften under the weight of seasons, wind, and neglect. Roofs sagged in places, marble steps cracked beneath their own ambition, and paint peeled in curling sheets, revealing the scars of both weather and time. Some mansions fell into decay entirely, their corridors overrun by ivy, their windows darkened and empty, standing like monuments to forgotten power, their grandeur a haunting echo rather than a living presence. Others were transformed into museums, private retreats, or venues for the curious, their walls preserved, their rooms restored. But even then, the renovations could not erase the layers of memory that lingered like shadows beneath polished floors and glossy veneers. Every archway, every gilded frame, every spiral staircase bore witness to the lives that had moved through them, the choices made in secrecy, the ambitions that had carved every detail with relentless precision. Ghosts of ambition haunted these halls, not in the spectral sense, but in the weight of purpose left behind, in the energy of obsession that had once demanded excellence at any cost. The echoes of late-night conversations, whispered instructions to servants, the hushed murmurs of family disputes, and the impatient stamping of wealth-driven footsteps were absorbed into the very fabric of the architecture. Shadows of greed lurked alongside them, subtle yet persistent, reminding visitors that every chandelier, every painting, every sweeping ballroom had a hidden price. Not in currency, but in human sacrifice, quiet compromises, and a careful negotiation between desire and duty. Even the most beautiful rooms carried a tension, almost imperceptible, as though the walls themselves remembered the pressures, the anxieties, the small heartbreaks of those who had lived under their roof. Memories were carved in stone. The stone that lined the staircases, the balustrades, the exterior facades seemed to hum with stories. The laborers' weary hands that shaped it, the artisans who bent over tools for years to realize someone else's vision, the lives constrained to shadowed corridors while others reveled above in opulence. The gardens, too, held their own recollections, the echo of footsteps across gravel paths, the quiet sigh of wind through hedges that had been trimmed into perfection, the stillness that followed a gathering, heavy with unspoken tensions, departures, and departures postponed. Even after restoration, after paint was refreshed and marble polished, the air retained a certain gravity, an intangible weight that seemed to ask, what was given and what was lost, in the pursuit of beauty and power? And yet, despite decay and preservation, there was a strange magnetism in the silence of these spaces. Empty halls invited reflection, corridors stretched into infinity as if to contain the complexity of lives within them. Windows framed sunlight that caught dust motes, illuminating histories in golden beams. The mansion spoke to anyone who would listen, whispering lessons about desire, ambition, pride, and fragility. Their grandeur was timeless, but the human imprint was unrelenting, a subtle reminder that wealth, no matter how dazzling, carries consequences that echo far beyond the lifetimes of those who created it. Even as visitors walked lightly through restored rooms, the ghosts remained, persistent, invisible, eternal, and the shadows of past choices waited quietly, shaping perception, stirring thought, and reminding all who entered that history is never truly silent, nor is it ever truly gone. Beyond Kikwit, the Rockefeller name stretched its influence across dozens of lesser-known estates, each one a world unto itself, hidden from public view, shielded by forests, gates, and the quiet vigilance of staff who understood the gravity of their charge. These were not the grand, celebrated palaces, the ones that drew tourists and historians alike, but secret sanctuaries where wealth and ambition were expressed in more intimate, subtle ways. Some featured private chapels tucked behind ivy-covered walls, spaces designed for reflection or discreet gatherings. Others held gardens deliberately obscured, labyrinthine in design, where the scent of roses mingled with the whispers of those few who wandered there. Every detail was intentional, a hidden fountain here, a secluded bench there, pathways that seemed to lead nowhere yet connected everything, a carefully choreographed balance of privacy and control, beauty and secrecy. Few historians ever documented these estates. The records, if they existed, were fragmentary. A ledger here, a fleeting mention in correspondence there, a faded photograph capturing a wing of a house barely understood. Visitors were rarer still, often limited to family, close associates, or select staff who maintained the grounds and interiors. Even then, movement was circumscribed, eyes were watchful, and conversations were measured. Within these hidden spaces, lives unfolded quietly. shielded from public scrutiny, yet shaped entirely by the invisible hand of hierarchy, obligation, and expectation. The human stories, births, deaths, romances, rivalries, were etched not into the pages of history, but into the walls themselves, into the polished wood of staircases, the stone of garden fountains, the quiet hush of chapel pews. Every structure bore witness, absorbing memory like a sponge, even as the world beyond remained unaware. Rooms for clandestine meetings existed throughout these estates, spaces designed for discretion, where business could be discussed without the intrusion of the press or the gaze of outsiders. Doors were thick, locks precise, and windows positioned to shield occupants from prying eyes. It was in these rooms that decisions rippled outward, shaping not only the family but industries and communities far beyond the estate walls. The tension of secrecy hung in the air, almost tangible, a constant reminder that wealth was both a privilege and a responsibility, a power that demanded careful stewardship. Those who worked within these spaces understood their role in preserving appearances, maintaining silence, and ensuring that the outer world never glimpsed the complex interplay of ambition, desire, and fear at play behind the walls. These hidden gems are relics of a private world few are allowed to see, yet their presence shapes perception even today. They are evidence of the careful orchestration of lives, the meticulous curation of appearances, and the human cost that often accompanied luxury. The air in these rooms seems charged with memory, a delicate tension that flickers in sunlight through windows, that stirs in the shadows of hallways, that lingers in gardens long after footsteps have vanished. Every corridor, every secluded alcove, every hidden chamber is infused with the ambitions, fears, and desires of those who conceived, built, and lived within them. To wander these estates is to move through time, to feel the weight of choices made in secrecy, the quiet sacrifices demanded by beauty and status, and the persistent echo of human tension that refuses to be erased. And yet, for all their secrecy, for all the restraint demanded by their design, the estates remain magnetic, drawing the eye and the imagination to contemplate what it means to live, to serve, and to preserve in a world governed by wealth. They are monuments not just to opulence, but to the complex, often hidden interplay of human emotion, ambition, and memory, spaces where beauty conceals as much as it reveals, and where every shadow carries the weight of a story few will ever know. Today, some mansions are preserved, their walls polished, their gardens maintained, open to the public as though inviting the world to step inside a carefully constructed illusion. Visitors wander through halls that gleam in sunlight, marveling at chandeliers that glimmer like captured starlight, tapestries that tell stories of distant lands and distant ambitions, and staircases carved with precision that seems almost unnatural. Artifacts are safeguarded, cataloged, and displayed, each piece a testament to craftsmanship, vision, and the resources that could command the labor of hundreds. Yet even as cameras flash and footsteps echo across marble floors, a question hangs in the air, heavy and unspoken. Are we celebrating history or mourning a lifestyle built on privilege and secrecy? A world that required quiet sacrifices invisible to the eye. Every restored hallway tells a story, every sculpture holds a memory, and every echo asks the silent question: what did it really cost? Walk slowly, and the answer begins to emerge in the subtleties. The light through the tall windows highlights the fine dust that settles in corners, the faint scratches on polished floors, the slight unevenness of stones that once bore the weight of hurried footsteps. These are traces of lives that moved invisibly alongside grandeur. Servants who bent over floors and kitchens, artisans who poured skill into wood and stone, laborers who endured exhaustion and exposure to create a world they would never fully inhabit. The human presence lingers in the quietest moments, the pause between a visitor's step and the echo that follows. Even in the absence of those who built and served, the mansion remembers, and in remembering, it speaks. Each restored object carries with it tension and contradiction. A vase on a pedestal is both beauty and testament, fragile yet unyielding, its perfection reliant on a network of unseen labor and hidden sacrifice. A sculpture, polished to gleam, is both inspiration and reminder, the work of hands long gone, skilled beyond recognition, whose names exist only in faint ledger entries or whispered recollections. The grandeur above, intended to awe and impress, casts shadows below, shadows that ripple into the spaces unseen by public eyes, where private grief, jealousy, and ambition once took root. To walk these halls is to witness the duality of wealth, its power to inspire and its power to dominate. Even the gardens, meticulously arranged and maintained, hold echoes of what was required to sustain them. Every hedge clipped with precision, every flower bed aligned with mathematical exactness, every fountain timed to trickle or roar, speaks not only of beauty, but of vigilance. The rhythm of work, the silent obedience demanded of those who cared for the landscape, is embedded in the soil, carried by the wind, remembered by the rustle of leaves and the splash of water. It is a choreography of human effort hidden behind elegance, a quiet performance that continues to pulse beneath the visible perfection. And so, while the world may marvel at the preservation of these mansions, while guided tours recount the architecture and the art, the true story persists in subtle ways. In the weight of a carved banister, in the echo of footsteps along stone corridors, in the hush of a restored room, the mansions ask their visitors to consider the cost behind the beauty, the tension behind the order, the quiet human presence that remains even after decades, even after centuries. They are monuments not only to wealth, taste, and ambition, but to sacrifice, labor, and the fragile, enduring heartbeat of humanity that cannot be polished away. Gold cannot protect from grief. Marble cannot shield from loneliness. The walls, polished to perfection, reflected light in brilliance but not warmth. Within these vast spaces, silence often weighed heavier than sound, and opulence could not fill the void left by absence, loss, or the quiet ache of expectation unmet. Behind every grand staircase, behind every sweeping arch, there was a heartbeat, sometimes steady, sometimes faltering, a reminder that these halls, though magnificent, were not merely stone and timber, but the stage for human fragility. The chandeliers overhead gleamed as though they contained all the world's possibilities, yet beneath their sparkle, whispered fears moved like shadows, carried by those who understood the weight of ambition, responsibility, and secrecy. The mansion's beauty dazzled the eye, but it could not protect the heart. Families moved through the rooms with ceremony and grace, yet the rhythm of life within these walls was not dictated solely by comfort or taste. Children learned early that attention could be measured in gestures and proximity, that presence mattered less than appearance. Parents navigated their roles with precision, maintaining facades while contending with private tensions and ambitions that could not be named aloud. Servants, ever aware of these subtleties, moved like ghosts through the wings, balancing labor with vigilance, their every step a negotiation between duty and survival. Even laughter, when it occurred, seemed tempered, rehearsed, a note held carefully within the mansion's carefully composed symphony. The heartbeat of the household was complex, its rhythm both beautiful and fragile, pulsing quietly beneath the grandeur. The Rockefeller mansion empire dazzled the world, not only through scale and artistry, but through the meticulous orchestration of life itself. Every corridor, every gallery, every expansive lawn was crafted to impress, to inspire awe, to manifest the power of wealth made tangible. Yet behind the artistry lay layers of tension and sacrifice that few could perceive. Every marble floor bore the pressure of countless footsteps, every polished banister the grip of hands that labored unseen. Even the finest chandeliers seemed to tremble under the weight of expectation, reflecting not only light but the intricate network of lives, obligations, and ambitions that sustained the empire above. The opulence was a stage, but the human stories, the grief, the longing, the quiet endurance, were the invisible script that gave it substance. Loss and ambition moved like invisible currents, threading through the grand halls and shadowed corners alike. Births celebrated behind closed doors, deaths mourned in secrecy, decisions that shaped generations unfolded quietly beneath ceilings painted with gods and allegories. The richness of art and architecture could not mask the frailty of those who inhabited these spaces. A room could be magnificent yet lonely, a garden breathtaking yet isolating, a library grand yet filled with whispered secrets. The very air seemed to carry memory, heavy with footsteps, murmurs, sighs, and unresolved longing. And so, while visitors might marvel at the grandeur, the scale, the artistry, there is another world beneath the glitter, a world of tension, of quiet sacrifice, of vulnerability, held beneath layers of marble and gold. The mansion empire, dazzling and imposing, is also a testament to the delicate, enduring presence of human life. Fragile and persistent, echoing in every corridor, reflected in every chandelier, whispered in every shadow, reminding all who enter that no wealth, however magnificent, can protect the human heart from longing, loss, or the quiet ache of existence. The mansions remain, silent, proud, and haunting, their stone facades standing against time like sentinels guarding not only history, but the lives, ambitions, and secrets that gave them meaning. Each window, tall and precise, frames a view both breathtaking and isolating. Gardens trimmed to impossible perfection, stretching into horizons that feel infinite yet controlled, walk their halls, and the air carries a weight, a faint pulse of memory that lingers in the polished floors, in the gleaming woodwork, in the soft whisper of silk curtains moving in the breeze. The grandeur is immediate, overwhelming, yet it is tempered by the sense that beauty here has a cost, a human ledger written in quiet sacrifice, obedience, and unseen devotion. The walls are more than architecture. They are witnesses, absorbing the subtle tensions of generations, carrying the invisible stories of those who walked these halls long before us, and those whose footsteps will never be forgotten. They are monuments not only to wealth, but to ambition, secrecy, and the human stories that wealth cannot erase. Every staircase, carved with meticulous care, bears the imprint of laborers who shaped the vision of a world they could never fully enter. Every chandelier, glittering with 1,000 reflections, casts shadows that trace the paths of those who moved in service, who worked in silence, and who witnessed both triumph and heartbreak in the rooms above. Behind the art, behind the tapestries, behind the gilded ceilings, there exist layers of experience invisible to the casual eye. Children growing up in corridors echoing with expectation, families negotiating power in quiet gestures, servants navigating a delicate choreography of obedience and discretion. These walls do not merely contain space, they contain memory, emotion, and the lingering pulse of human fragility intertwined with grandeur. Step through their doors carefully, and you sense the rhythm of the lives that have moved here in private, imperceptible patterns. The echo of laughter or argument, the hush of grief or whispered hope, can still be felt in the hush of a gallery, the curve of a hallway, the subtle tilt of a staircase. There are rooms never seen by visitors, spaces where decisions were made that rippled outward to shape fortunes, relationships, and legacies. There are gardens hidden behind walls, private chapels tucked into quiet wings, corridors where footsteps move with caution, as if the past watches and judges. The mansion is alive in the silence, holding its stories in equilibrium, and the visitor, however privileged, becomes aware that even without a living occupant, the house itself remembers. History has a way of watching back. Marble floors reflect not only light, but long-forgotten glances. Windows frame vistas that seem serene, yet are layered with tension, ambition, and longing. Staircases ascend and descend like arteries through the heart of human endeavor, each step tracing both glory and suffering. And while the world marvels at the beauty, the scale, the art, and the engineering, the mansion quietly reminds those who linger that its grandeur is inseparable from the human costs embedded in every stone, every carving, every pane of glass. Its beauty is breathtaking, yes, but it is also a mirror, reflecting both our capacity to create and our vulnerability to history, desire, and the weight of unspoken stories. The mansions endure, more than monuments to wealth. They are repositories of ambition, memory, and emotion, holding the fragile pulse of generations within their walls, whispering, ever so softly, that the human stories behind grandeur are never truly gone, and that those who enter are always in some measure seen.